Everyone swears by their favorite wood glue. Titebond fans, Gorilla Glue warriors, and even Elmer budget gang. But which one is actually the strongest? Today we're going to find out with real testing, real numbers. Hopefully I don't break my workbench in the process. Let's put these glues to the test, dry and after they've been soaked, because real projects don't always stay dry. I've used everything from the cheapest hardware store glue to the good stuff, and honestly, I rarely have joints fail. So is it all hype? Or are some of these glues secretly overkill? Here's what we're testing. Titebond 1, the classic. Titebond 2, the yellow bottle you see in every woodworking video. Titebond 3, the waterproof one. Gorilla Wood Glue, big box favorite. Elmer's Carpenter Glue, cheap and cheerful. Hide Glue, great for furniture you might want to take apart later. And just for fun, CA Glue. It's not really a wood glue, but hey, let's see what happens. To keep this fair, every sample is made from the same batch of pine. Same butt joint, roughly the same clamp pressure. I'm doing 2 dry samples and 2 that I'll soak in water overnight. I've attached a threaded eye at the same position on each sample, and I'll use a ratchet strap and this fish scale to break the joint, so we can measure how much force it takes to break each one. I'll take an average of the 2 to get the force for each sample. I'll test until something snaps. Hopefully it's the joint and not my scale. All samples were glued and clamped based on the instructions on the bottle. Time to find out who's strongest in dry conditions. All right, here's the first sample of Titebond 1. Let's see what we got. That was actually a lot more violent than I thought it was going to be. You can see though that the glue sort of did fail. I kind of expected to see more damage to the wood itself. Next up, Titebond 2 Dry, sample 1. All right, that one took some wood with it. That's a good sign of a good glue joint. So when I decided to do this, I purchased this fish scale, which maxes out at 110 pounds. And I thought that would be plenty for this test. But both samples of Titebond 2 Dry max this scale out. So I'm just going to have to put 110 pounds for now. Next up, Titebond 3, sample 1, Dry. When the Titebond 3 joint broke, a lot of wood came with it, which is a good sign of a great joint. All right, now moving on to Hide Glue, sample 1, Dry. Oh, wow, holy crap. That one took a lot of wood with it, which makes me think the hide glue penetrated really deep into this wood. It felt incredibly strong. That was probably the hardest one for me to rip apart so far. Impressive. Time for a budget-friendly classic, Elmer's Carpenter Glue. This is sample 1, Dry. Not bad, Elmer's, not bad. I think it might have maxed out my scale, so we'll see. Okay, time for a fan favorite, Gorilla Glue. Dry, sample 1. Holy crap! Oh, God. Oh my gosh! Look at all the wood that came with that glue. That glue penetrated deep into that wood. That is extremely impressive. Okay, the next one is Titebond CA glue, and I'm not really sure if it classifies as a wood glue, but we're going to test it anyway. This is sample 1, Dry. That was actually pretty impressive. It penetrated really deep under the surface too, and in order to break it, you had to pull a lot of wood with it. I averaged the 2 values and put them in this graph. Most of the glue performed really well and maxed out my fish scale somewhere above 110 pounds of force. Surprisingly, Titebond 3 had the lowest average force of 98 pounds. But I would say any of these are plenty strong for a butt joint like this. I was also very surprised at how well CA glue performed, and the Gorilla Glue and Hide Glue both felt far stronger than the max of my scale. Now for the real torture test. Same glues, but these joints have been soaked in water overnight. This is where waterproof claims get real. Next up, Titebond 1 Wet, sample 1. That actually did a little bit better than I thought it would, considering Titebond 1 is not waterproof. It actually still did destroy some of the joint. That one did not perform as well as the first one. Okay, this is Titebond 2 Wet, Sample 1. That one did take a lot of wood with it, but it didn't feel like it took very much force to rip it apart. Now we've got Titebond 3 Sample 1 Wet. I don't know about that. Titebond 3 is supposed to be waterproof, but that came apart a little easier than I would have expected. Once again, I'm not super impressed with the Titebond 3 in the wet condition. I kind of expected that to be almost as good as the dry. Maybe once the Titebond 3 dries out, it returns to its normal strength. Maybe that's a test I can do in the future. The next test is going to be the high glue wet. And I don't expect as good results as the dry. As you can see, the glue is actually a little bit gelatinous. And it does not look like it's going to hold up well at all. So let's find out. Okay, so this is high glue wet sample 1. All right, so this did not do what I thought it would do. The glue was very gooey on the outside, but where the water could not fully penetrate, the high glue actually did quite well. It felt pretty strong. I think what's going on here is that the high glue penetrates deeper into the wood, and once it's penetrated that deep into the wood, I don't think that water can get to it very easily, but any high glue that is exposed to water just falls apart. So, interesting result. Pretty similar result. Not amazing, but still pretty impressive considering how soft the glue actually got. This is Elmer's Sample 1 Wet. Not too bad. A little gooey on the edges, but overall, not too different feeling than the dry. I don't know why, but that one felt very weak. We'll see what the numbers show. This is Gorilla Glue Sample 1 Wet. So maybe not as strong as the dry, but dang, that still took a lot of wood. That was still pretty darn strong. Once again, I have never seen any of these other glues take that much wood with it. This stuff penetrates really deep under the surface of the wood. And I'll also say that the Gorilla Glue itself seems totally unaffected by being wet. This is Titebond CA Glue Wet Sample 1. This did not feel like it took a lot of force, but it sure took a lot of wood with it. Let's check the data and see what happened. Man, that sure didn't take a lot of wood with it, but geez, I don't know why. That one felt really strong even though it was wet. These results were very interesting. The Titebond products actually had the lowest scores when wet. Even Titebond 3 scored lower than all the other glues. Gorilla Glue was an absolute beast and didn't seem to care if it was dry or wet. Elmer's was pretty solid. High glue was soft when directly exposed to water, but the joint still held strong. And CA glue? It was way better in both dry and wet than I would have expected. I think it penetrated really deep into the wood. So after all of that, dry winner. It's really hard to pick a winner seeing as how most of these glues max out my scale, but it did feel like the Gorilla Glue wasn't going to break at all. So I'll have to give it the win. The wet winner is a little surprising. Titebond 3 really disappointed me here, seeing as how it's known to be waterproof. But once again, the Gorilla Glue was very hard to break and seemed to almost perform as good as when it was dry. But it's worth mentioning, Gorilla Glue foams and can be pretty messy. If you take that into account, any of the other glue could work great dry, and other than Titebond 1 and 2, most of these perform okay with a little moisture too. I'll be honest, I expected this to be a boring test, but seeing the Elmer's and Titebond glue compete with the big names was pretty wild. If I didn't know better, I think they've been hitting the gym. So the moral of the story, don't trust the marketing, test your glue. And if your joint fails, maybe blame the wood or your technique. So I would say Gorilla Glue takes the win for pure strength, but I'll never look at CA glue the same way again. I noticed you're still here, so you must have enjoyed this video. So go ahead and click on this video down here to learn even more about wood glue. If you like practical tests like this and not just theory, hit that subscribe button because next time, maybe I'll test glue versus screws to see which one actually holds better. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that. Until then, keep it sticky, and I'll see you in the next one.